Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as always, Atrisa, and welcome back to our lovely podcast, Living Richly with Curo. We're so happy that you have joined us again today for episode 10.
10.
We're on two hands now.
I know. That's exciting.
It is exciting. It's like a big
Yeah, it's like,
milestone for us.
yeah, and it's officially like enough episodes for a person to binge, right? Like when you're first getting into the
Yes.
podcast and you're a little bit behind, and now
Right.
you've got a bunch that you can just listen to, like all back to back. That's fun.
Yes. Yeah. Feel free to binge our podcast
Binge our
this
podcast.
weekend. We won't be mad. So today's topic is another frequently asked question and discussion that we have a whole bunch with clients in our practice. And that is, should I fund a pre-tax 401k or should I fund a Roth 401k? So that is our topic that we're going to dig into today. But before we get there, we always love to do a little A-team catch up. So I'll go first today. I feel like I always put you
Yes.
on the spot, Teresa, to go first. So my exciting and super boring update is we need a new roof on our house. I feel like I frequently talk about the, house maintenance issues that we have.
Yeah,
Not really issues, but this is part of owning a home.
right.
Anyway, do you remember, did you guys in Maryland get the crazy hailstorm on April 15th of this year?
I think we did. I know we got really bad weather and power went out and it was sort of a torrential downpour kind of event. I don't know if we got the hail though, but
Okay. Well, we were in a meeting. Drew, one of our advisors in our firm, and I were in a meeting in a Zoom, and all of a sudden you could hear like the hail pellets hitting against the window. Yeah, it was
mhm.
crazy. I'm thankful for that hailstorm now because now our insurance is buying me a new roof.
Yeah.
So thankful for the hail.
Thank you, Hale.
I know, right? So that's like $15,000 I don't have to come out of pocket. So that's my super boring slash exciting update is I'm getting a new roof and my insurance deductible is like $2,500. So I'm getting a new roof for
Oh,
$2,500 and
yeah.
I'm
That's
really excited
fantastic.
about it.
Yeah. I'm often complaining about insurance just because I always feel like they find some reason to not cover the thing that you want covered. So it's nice when you get a win with the insurance company. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. So this roofing company that we found, they actually contract out to like an adjuster company, and the adjuster
Okay.
company is the one who deals with the insurance, which is brilliant because I think they
Mhm.
know the language to use. They know that they deal with insurance companies all the time. So instead of you as the customer of the insurance company who, we don't really know how to talk to insurance companies, right?
Right.
Property and casualty in particular. So this adjuster company sort of took care of the entire process. They even came to my house to do the inspection. I didn't even have to be there. So the whole process was pretty cool.
Very nice. Well, good for
Yeah.
you.
Thanks. So exciting.
I know. So thrilling.
What about
New
you?
roofs.
I
Um,
I know, right? I know
yeah,
you have something way more exciting to share and interesting than a new roof.
I don't know if it's that much more interesting, but so of course, I am a golfer now. That's my
Yes.
manifestation. But to
Yes, you
further
are.
my progress into my new status as a golfer, I started taking lessons. So it's a group lesson, it's not private instruction. So I had my first lesson on Sunday, which was all about chipping with a pitching wedge. We spent an hour on just chipping, but it was a nice exercise. It was nice practice. It was nice to have an actual coach walk you through what you're doing really well, but then what you are not doing as well. And the coach just happens to be the super positive person, which is helpful. And he's been playing golf, I think, for 50 years. So it was
Wow.
a nice experience. I have three more lessons with this small group. I think there's about seven ladies in this group that are all taking these lessons. So it's just us girls, which is always nice because I don't know if you've been on a golf course for any extended period of time. It is a boys' club, as you can imagine, and it can be
Yes.
intimidating, especially when you're playing at courses where golf is really popular in that area, like in Potomac, like where I typically play in Potomac, Maryland. So it can be really intimidating as a woman to be on the course sometimes. So to be doing this small group lesson with just ladies, women of various levels, but most of us beginners, like in the first, couple years of playing or learning to play. So it's fun. So that's what's new with me. And I mean, I feel like this time next year I should qualify for LPGA, right? Like I think I'm
Oh my
well on my
gosh.
way.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about losing you to the golf circuit.
I
Should
know,
I be
I
worried?
know, I know. I mean, I'll give you enough notice before I decide to turn pro. It won't be a surprise.
Not possible. All the notice in the world is not enough notice.
No, I don't think we have to worry about that. I'm really just playing one as a new challenge, right? Golf is hard, so it's just nice to have something that's a challenge, just outside of the work we do all the time. And then it's a good way to just get outside, to get exercise, and it's a really social sport, right? It's a really nice way to meet people and interact with people on the driving range or the putting green or around the clubhouse. So it's been a really good time so far. I'm spending way too much money though. Somebody should have warned me how expensive golf would be. I need to start a
Not
GoFundMe. So
a
if
cheap
any of our
hobby.
if any of our listeners wants to contribute to my golf career, uh, let me know. I'll send you my Zelle information.
Yeah, it is definitely not a cheap hobby, but it's fun.
No.
But it's also good for business networking. When I first started in the business, my hiring manager told me I had to learn golf because that was the
Mm.
only way that I was going to make it in this business. The only way that
Wow.
people do deals and, acquire new clients is on the golf course. Thankfully I proved him wrong, but because I do not
Yeah.
golf, but it's great. It's good for networking and building relationships, and because inevitably you're out there on the course for hours and you're getting to
Right.
know these people, and you start talking about what you do and how you help people, and so it's also a great business development tool as well.
Yeah. It's been a good time so far. Of course, we're in like a heat wave right now in the
Oh my
DC
gosh,
metro
yes.
area, excuse me. So it's like scorching hot in the 90s on the course, which is rough. But it's good. So that's
Yeah.
it for me. That's
Well,
all I
I'm
got
happy for
today.
you.
Thanks.
I'm happy for you. Awesome. All right. So let's get into our topic as we promised, to talk about the difference between pre-tax and Roth 401ks and what should you contribute, because this is a very common question that comes up when you are thinking about your 401k. So let's kick off with talking about the difference between pre-tax and Roth, just to kind of set some foundational knowledge in case you're not familiar with what the difference is. When we're looking at a pre tax 401k, what that means is we're funding our 401k with pre tax dollars. In other words, we are not paying taxes today on the money that we're putting into our 401k. It grows what's called tax deferred, so we don't have to pay taxes every year on any of the investment gains or dividends that we're earning. But we pay taxes when we pull the money out later on in life, presumably in retirement. And we'll pay income taxes at our ordinary income bracket when we make those distributions in the future. So, one key thing to remember about retirement plans is we're going to pay taxes on the way in, or we're going to pay taxes on the way out, but we're going to pay
You're
taxes.
gonna pay
So
taxes.
that is the key difference. Now, on the Roth, just take that and flip flop it. On the Roth, we're paying taxes on our income today. So we're funding the Roth with after tax dollars. We get that tax deferred growth. Again, we don't have to pay taxes on any of the earnings, dividends, investment gains. And assuming we pull money out and it's a qualified distribution later on in life, it is 100% tax free. So it is so powerful to think about compounding interest and the snowball that investments end up becoming over decades if you just let them ride and invest
Right.
properly. And now you've got this very large pot of money at the end of the day that you can distribute tax free. And also, if your beneficiaries, your kids, or any, your spouse inherits those tax-free assets, they too get to distribute tax-free. So super powerful investment vehicle when you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the power of tax deferred growth in either case, right? Rather in the traditional or the 401k, being able to defer those taxes as investments grow and compound is incredibly powerful to building up retirement assets over your career.
Yeah, and just to put some numbers behind it, because I think conceptually, especially if you're younger off in your career, it's hard to kind of think about, well, what's the big deal if I have to pay taxes later on in life? So, using today's tax rates and just very high level numbers, let's say that you need to generate $100,000 in after tax income in retirement just to sustain your lifestyle. Let's just say it's $100,000. And let's say 100% of your retirement assets are in those pre-tax 401ks or pre-tax IRAs. That means we're basically having to take about $130,000 roughly out of your pre-tax 401k or IRA every year just to net you that 100. So $30,000, you're taking it out of your investment account, but it's literally just going to taxes. Versus if you had all of your money in after tax dollars. Now, the reality is most of the times we don't see people with 100% in Roth assets, but hypothetically speaking, if you did, in that same scenario, to generate you $100,000 of income, guess what? We're taking out $100,000 from your Roth IRA or your Roth 401k. So just a big difference when you think about the tax impact when you're having to take these distributions later in life. All right. So speaking of tax considerations, I think that's a nice a nice segue into the next. Now that we've kind of laid the foundation of what is the difference, let's talk, Teresa, about some of the tax considerations that we should be thinking of before making this decision.
Yeah, the biggest consideration, of course, is going to be what is your current tax situation? Where are you from a marginal income tax bracket right now? Because, of course, the idea around making contributions to a traditional 401k means that you're getting the tax savings upfront. You're getting it right now, today, and having to then pay the taxes later on in the future. So if you are in a higher income tax bracket now, if you are a high income earner now, and there is some expectation that once you move into a work optional phase, that marginal tax bracket would come down, then the pre-tax contributions to a traditional 401k probably makes sense, right? Because that money is going to go in and you're not going to pay taxes on it as those contributions are made, which gives you the tax savings while you're in the higher income bracket. Of course, in retirement or later on in life, when you start to pull the money out, you will pay taxes. But the idea is now that that marginal income tax bracket is most likely lower than it was when you were in really high income earning years of your life. Of course, for Roth contribution considerations, it would be just the opposite. So, if you are in a lower tax bracket now, or even if you are maybe in the starting phases of a career where your income is lower now, even if it's expected to grow over time, if you're in that lower income bracket, then paying the taxes up front now probably makes more sense because those, again, you don't get the tax benefit now. You may not necessarily need it, right? If you're in a lower income tax bracket, but then the assets will grow tax deferred. And then, of course, qualified distributions later in life will be tax free to you. So that's typically the biggest consideration when we're consulting with a client about whether or not a Roth or a traditional makes sense. It typically starts with what income tax bracket are you in right now? Higher income earners probably want to default to pre-tax contributions to a traditional. Lower income earners should probably consider contributions to their Roth 401k.
Yeah, and as with anything that we talk about in financial planning, there are always caveats
Right.
and exceptions. And one of the things that we talk with clients about frequently is not only what tax bracket do you think you will be in the future, but what do you think overall tax rates will be like in the future? And I strongly believe, based on the financial position that we find ourselves in the United States anyway, that tax rates will have to be higher in the future. I don't see another way that we get out of the debt situation that we're in, except for tax rates being higher. So even if you are living off of less income in retirement, but we find ourselves in a higher tax situation, which I think is likely, then Roth may make sense now, even if you are in a higher tax bracket. So these are some of the conversations that we have with clients. And at the end of the day, it is a personal decision in terms of your beliefs too and what you think. If you're not concerned about taxes being higher in the future and you find yourself in a high tax bracket today, then yeah, maybe the pre-tax makes sense. But I feel like when we all have the income now when we're earning, even if we're in a higher tax bracket, probably some Roth makes sense just to give ourselves the diversification benefits in the future. If even if you're in a higher tax bracket now, but 100% or the grand majority of your retirement assets are in pre-tax, I would highly, highly suggest that you consider Roth, even again, if it doesn't necessarily make the most sense from a calculation today.
Right. That diversification is always helpful. And especially once you're into that work optional phase of life and we're having those really in depth conversations about how to take income, right? What's the best income plan for our clients? Having sort of those two pots to choose from and to draw from, because then it gives you some flexibility from year to year, right? And other things that you want to be mindful of in retirement is, too much income also adds on to Medicare premium cost, right? So there are things that you have to be mindful of when drawing taxable income in retirement. So having access to both, right? To some traditional retirement assets as well as some Roth helps gives you some more flexibility around the income planning once you are into a retirement phase of your life.
Yes, the Medicare premiums are key. A lot of people don't realize that Medicare premiums, once you turn age 65 and get on Medicare, are impacted by income. So your premiums can increase if you have higher taxable income. The other thing is there are these things called required minimum distributions
Mhm.
that we have to start taking from any of our pre-tax assets. This is both pre-tax 401k as well as traditional IRAs. We don't have to take required minimum distributions on Roth assets. But one of the things, the other unintended consequences of us putting all of our money in pre tax is now we have a large IRA or 401k that we have to start taking distributions from, which, by the way, becomes taxable income. So we could, by funding everything to pre-tax while we're working, we could set ourselves up for a negative tax situation in the future because now we're being forced to take distributions out somewhere between ages of 73 and 75 now, depending upon when you were born. But we're being forced to take out these large distributions that then increase our taxable income, could potentially push us into a higher tax bracket, could potentially increase our Medicare premium. So many different considerations aside from just strictly looking at what's my tax bracket today versus what do I think it will be in the future. And tell me if you disagree with this, Atrisa, but in our practice, when we're working with retired clients, in my experience, the majority of the time our clients are not dramatically dropping tax brackets once they retire.
Right.
We do have some clients I can think of off the top of my head right now that lived way under their means while they were working and they banked tons of money in savings, and those folks, yes, I can say they did drop tax brackets, marginal tax bracket, once they went into retirement. But the majority of clients that we see go into retirement, it's not like you're going dramatically down in tax brackets, because if you have a pension, that's taxable income. Once you start taking IRA distributions, that's taxable income. Probably Social Security, 85% of it will be taxable because at a certain income level, 85% of Social Security becomes taxable. You may have capital gains or dividends in your portfolio. Once you add all of those things up and those numbers up, it's not like we're really seeing people dramatically drop in tax bracket. Do you agree or disagree
I
with that in your
absolutely agree.
observation?
Absolutely agree. And I think as you start to have more conversations right in that pre retirement phase where you start reviewing with clients their income sources in retirement, I think it can be pretty eye opening for them as well, because it is a misconception, I think, most cases, that you're guaranteed right to dramatically drop in the income bracket once you're in retirement. And that's not the case. Typically, I will see the biggest drop offs where people maybe were business owners and they sold a business right before retirement. Of course, they have that big, huge tax year, right, in the business sale year. They have those capital gains taxes to pay. And then, of course, their income sources maybe will drop off dramatically. But for most people, as you mentioned, once they start to add up all the retirement income sources, in addition to those people who were great savers and amassed these huge traditional 401ks or IRAs, and now they have that required minimum distribution, they start to very quickly realize that the income bracket is not going to drop. The taxable bracket is not going to drop as dramatically as they thought.
Yes. So let's say you are someone who is closer to retirement. Maybe you're in your 50s and planning to retire in your 60s. So you're getting close to retiring. And let's say that the bulk of your money is in pre-tax assets because there wasn't really as much of a focus on Roth, or perhaps you didn't have it available. 401k plans just recently started offering Roth 401ks as an option. So if you find yourself in that situation, the reality is you probably don't have a ton of time to dramatically change the ratios between pre-tax and after tax. But one of the things that we analyze for clients quite frequently is looking at conversions, Roth conversions. So instead of contributions, conversions. And one of the things that we look at quite often is, does it make sense between when you retire and the age when you are forced to start taking required minimum distributions and you decide to turn on Social Security? There's a sweet spot there where we could potentially see a tax bracket decrease. And does it make sense to really get aggressive with Roth conversion? So if you find yourself in the situation where you're closer to retirement, you feel like you don't have a ton of time to make a really big dent in your pre-tax versus after-tax ratios, this is something to consider and speak with your financial professional about, to have them crunch the numbers for you, because this works really nicely in a lot of cases, and it does help when you're talking about that next generation of inheriting your retirement assets as well, because not only could it be a tax issue for you, but it could also be a tax issue for the next generation.
Yeah, and the passing of the Secure Act and the Secure Act 2.0 has actually done us a lot of favors in making that window of that sweet spot for conversions a little bit wider, right? So our required minimum distributions start later than they did prior to Secure Act 2.0. It used to be age 70 and a half. That since was pushed to 72, then to 73. Now, depending on your date of birth, it may not even be until 75. So if you retire in your 60s, right, maybe let's say you retire at 62 or 63, and you could potentially have over a decade to be able to take advantage of some Roth conversions before having to make required minimum distributions from a pre-tax 401k. So that's also been very helpful. On the other side, Secure Act 2.0 also limited the window for the next generation when they're inheriting 401k assets. So prior to the passing of the act, beneficiaries could stretch the distributions over their lifetime from any pre-tax retirement assets they inherited. Now, unless it's a spouse, now a spouse has different rules, but if there's a non-spouse beneficiary, like a child or a sibling, then they have 10 years to pull that money out of that IRA. So if it's all pre-tax dollars, they're going to be mandated to take a required minimum distribution, and it's going to be ordinary income tax to them that they have to recognize within 10 years. So by taking advantage of that window, that sweet spot of converting even a portion of the pre-tax assets to Roth IRAs, to Roth assets, it benefits you as well as the next generation, as Ann mentioned.
Yeah, such an important point. So the last thing to share is on limits. We get questions frequently, just confusion around the 401k contribution limits, and does that apply to pre-tax, Roth, both, combination, et cetera. So as I'm sure you're familiar, in 2024, if you are under the age of 50, the employee portion of a 401k contribution is $23,000. So you can fund $23,000 to your 401k. If you are over the age of 50, you get an additional 7,500. So your max is 30,500 to a 401k. That is for both pre-tax and Roth. So in other words, you can decide, I want everything to go to pre-tax. So if you are over the age of 50, that's 30,500 to pre-tax, or 30,500 to Roth, or a combination. You can split half and half, but that is the max that is able to go into your 401k for your employee contribution. Now, if your employer offers a match, that matches on top of that. So you can fund more, presumably, to the 401k if you have a match or an employer contribution. But this is another common question that we get, is how do I figure out how much I can actually fund? So it is in the, think of it as the bucket of 401k assets. And inside of that bucket, you decide how much I put to pre-tax versus Roth. But that is the max for the entire 401k of your employee contribution.
Yeah. And what's nice with the Roth 401k as well is that it doesn't have the income limit that an individual Roth IRA would. So people say, oh, well, maybe I make too much money to contribute to a Roth. That income limitation doesn't apply when we're talking about Roth 401k contributions. It does apply if you're establishing an individual Roth IRA, but you don't get that same limit. So even high income earners can make Roth contributions in their 401k.
Great point. Yes, glad you brought that up. All right. I think that probably wraps us with the pre-tax Roth 401k conversation.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts for us today, Atrisa?
Yeah. Well, one closing thought to the Roth 401k conversation first is just that working with a professional can be really helpful, right? It's sometimes hard to know how much and when and at what point in my career should I switch and change over. Working with financial professionals who can provide planning and give that guidance can be really, really helpful in making that determination. So just wanted to pin that little note as well. But then just my closing thought in general, and again, a lesson from the golf course, but the coach shared with us on Sunday that it's always important to find some little positive in everything that you do when you're learning to play golf, or even if you're a professional. Because what can very quickly happen is when you get into a negative space mentally, things start to go downhill and deteriorate very quickly. So much of it is mental. But I thought that was just such a good message, just in general, about positive thinking and how important it can be. I will admit that I can be a glass is half empty type person. So it really is an exercise for me to find the positives, right? To look for the best case scenarios. So even though it's something I learned in my golf adventures, I think it applies just in life every day. Is if you just try to find something positive in every day, in everything, something to be thankful for or grateful for, it really starts to turn your mindset and helps, I think, move things in a much more positive direction. Whereas when you tend to be negative, you can see things going downhill and deteriorating for you mentally very quickly. So, my positive thought is just to think some positive thoughts this week.
Love that. This is why we balance each other out so well too. Because between your glass half empty and my glass half
Mm-hmm.
full, we have a full glass together.
Yes.
So works well. Awesome. My closing thought is very, very easy, and it's just to get outside more, just to get
Mm-hmm.
outside and get some sunshine and fresh air and exercise. I think the majority of the United States that we have a vitamin D deficiency, like we just don't get enough sunshine. And we talked a couple weeks ago, one of my closing thoughts was just do something for 5 minutes, right? Whatever you've been
Mm-hmm.
wanting to do, just do it for 5 minutes. So my challenge to everyone this week is just get outside, assuming it's not raining, thunderstorming, get outside for 5 minutes a day and just check in with your body and see how that feels. I've been trying to just do more walking outside and, getting some fresh air. And I just feel so much better after being outside, coming back in. So that's my simple closing thought, is maybe commit over the summer months to spend at least 5 minutes outside. More if you can, for sure, but minimum of 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's such a good note. I, again, am not good at it, especially during the workday, right? I'll be sort of glued to this computer monitor all day. I'll eat my lunch here. So that's a good reminder for me to get outside more. And also, if you are a remote worker and you work from home, it's also easy to get kind of stuck inside, especially when you don't have to commute. So I think that's a good reminder for all of the remote workers as well, to just step outside and get some sun occasionally.
Yeah, I think it makes you more effective and more efficient too. Once you have that, you recharge your batteries outside and then can come back and really focus versus just trying to
Yeah,
plow through. I really
yeah.
do think the productivity starts declining when we try to do that.
Oh, I agree. And the sun can just so dramatically change your mood too, right? And we know that, right? After
Yes.
days of rain where you've been stuck inside, you start to feel yourself feel a little low emotionally, and then a good sunny day sometimes just shifts everything in that energy. So I think it's really good too, just from an emotional perspective, to soak up some sun every now and again.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this
Yeah.
week's episode. Thank you again so much for joining us. We appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it 5 stars, share it with a friend, coworker, all of the above, subscribe, all that good stuff, so that you are alerted when we drop new episodes, which is every Friday for you all. And we have a little announcement this week, which is we have a little incentive for you folks to send in questions that we can then answer on our podcast. Again, the email address to send in these questions is podcast@Curo, Curo, privatewealth.com. And for you folks who send in a question, if we answer your question on our podcast, we will send you a $10 Amazon gift card as a thank you for taking the time to send in your question. So we want to hear what's on your mind, what questions you have. We would love to answer them. So that's our little gift to you for sending in your questions. So thank you again for listening. We will see you next week. Ciao for now.
Next week. Good.